Today we start our readings from Rudyard Kipling from his published book Plain Tales from the Hills, published by Oxford World Classics. Rudyard Kipling was. Oh yeah, I'll read this initial introduction to this.
Cover. Nice. Good. Yeah.
Okay. So, for those who have not heard of Rudyard Kipling, let me read what is here. Rudyard Kipling, 1865 to 1936. So, he was of the 19th and early 20th century. And today we are in 2025. That's the 21st century. And he was for the last decade of the 19th century and at least the first 2 decades of the 20th century, the most popular writer in English, in both verse and prose, throughout the English-speaking world. Widely regarded as the greatest living English poet and storyteller, winner of the Nobel Prize for Literature, recipient of honorary degrees from the universities of Oxford, Cambridge, Edinburgh, Durham, McGill, Strasbourg, and the Sorbonne. He also enjoyed popular acclaim that extended far beyond academic and literary circles. So that is his very brief general background. There's a whole lot of him, what he did and all that, and how the world was in those days when he was writing about it. And his appeal is to all classes of society.
Tell us about Jungle Book.
He was an innovator and a virtuoso in the art of the short story. He does more than any of his predecessors to establish the short story as a major genre. He is a writer who extends that range of English literature in both subject matter and technique. He plunges readers into realms of imaginative experience, which then become part of our shared inheritance. So he has helped shape thoughts of millions of people in India and in England and even in other parts of the world.
So, Dad, I think it's an important point you raised, where he was born in India and he lived most of his life in British India during the British colonial rule of India, which they call the British Raj.
Right.
And he is a major source through which we are able to look back at the British encounters in India.
Yes.
So it is a view of India from the British lens as British Indians.
The world has got a picture of how British India used to be, what it used to think and how it used to behave, from the works of Rudyard Kipling. He has given us an immense treasure of melange of vista. He has verbally painted the entire picture of India as it used to be in those days. So there's a lot about Kipling here.
And Dad, what was the most famous book he wrote?
Well, he was somewhere, he lived in India and he had very close links with the place here and the people here, and so it was in the northern hill stations of northeastern of Shimla or no, the Kumar. He he wrote the Jungle Book. That was his most famous contribution. He wrote about jungle. He wrote Jungle Book, and India was the perfect setting for the Jungle Book because in England they had a picture of India as a very remote country full of jungles and animals and etc. And he wrote about it, creating magic with his words about the jungle. He created various characters like Mowgli was the boy who was the real protagonist of that. Then the tiger was called Sher Khan, and then there was also a Bhalu the bear, and Bagheera. Bagheera was what?
The panther, black panther.
The panther. So he had, with his words, these animals had come to life in the imagination of several generations of Indian children who grew up reading his books and short stories as part of their school English textbooks.
Disney.
Yes?
Became a Disney cartoon.
Oh, that one. Many of his stories have been made into Disney cartoons.
So what's this about? This book is called what?
This book is called The Plain Tales from the Hills. Plain Tales from the Hills was Kipling's first volume of prose fiction. Published in Calcutta in January 1888, just after his 22nd birthday. Imagine, just after 22 years of age, he published his first book of all these short stories. And it is a remarkable manifestation of precocious literary talent and a key document of Anglo-Indian social history. The tales, most of which were published in the Civil and Military Gazette between November 1886 and June 1887, that means within a short span of, say, 8 months, were plain in the sense of being simple, straightforward, unelaborated, but there is also the suppressed pun in the title on the opposition between the plains and the hills. This opposition, geographical, social, psychological, was a major factor in the life of British India in Kipling's day. The plains were teeming with millions of Indians who lived out their lives there, where troops were stationed in cantonments not for active service, which was to be sought then on the northwest frontier or in Burma, but as garrisons to maintain internal security, and where British administrators toiled year in, year out in an almost obsessive adherence to the gospel of work and their own Platonic ideals of good government. In the Punjab and North India, generally the climate was agreeable enough from October to March. But from April to September, the excessive heat made life almost unendurable. That is why in Kipling's poems, a pageant MP in departmental ditties, the globe-trotting member of parliament who came on a 4-month visit to study the East in November was persuaded to sign an agreement vowing to stay till September so that he would be forced to learn by personal experience what living conditions for his countrymen in India were really like. The only relief from the heat, discomfort and diseases of the plains was a leave spent in the hills, that is to say, at one of the hill stations built at a sufficient altitude to provide cool, pleasant conditions comparable with those at home. My months live at Shimla or whatever hill station my people went to was pure joy, as Kipling recalled in his old age. Every golden hour counted. It began in heat and discomfort by rail and road. It ended in the cool evening with a wood fire in one's bedroom. And next morning, 30 more of them ahead. The early cup of tea, the mother who brought it in, and the long talks of us all together again for 30 days of holiday in the hill station. As this implies, it was not uncommon for married men to send their women folk to the hills for more extended periods for the sake of their health, though the men themselves could join them only for limited periods unless they secured government posts which guaranteed a more extended stay. That goes into the private lives of the families who lived there. And there's a little ditty here where he has written Mrs. Reaver played a dominant role in the many stations. The extreme case is sketched by Kipling in one of his nursery rhymes for little Anglo-Indians. I had a little husband who gave me all his pay. I left him for Missouri, 100 miles away. I dragged my little husband's name through heaps of social mire and joined him in October, as good as you desire. So that's a little ditty. Missouri, Murree, Nainital, Dalhousie, and Darjeeling were all well-known hill stations in the lower Himalayas, but by far the most famous was Shimla. Its site, some 7,000 feet above sea level, had been retained in British hands after the Gurkha War of 1814-16. Houses were built there in the course of 1820s, and by mid-century, it had become the most fashionable of hill resorts, patronized by governor-generals and commanders-in-chief. A remarkable development took place in 1864 when Sir John Lawrence, the new viceroy and one of the titans of the old Punjab administration, decided that Shimla should become the summer residence of the government of India. And so on. It's a long introduction. For some period, he was based in Lahore, the capital of Punjab, where he worked as a state assistant director of the Civil and Military Gazette. And one of his duties was to prepare for the press all the telegrams of the day, to provide all the extracts. So he used to help with the publication of the bulletin. Oh yes, there's a background about the stories. Of the 40 stories in this book, 8 appeared there for the first time. These were so and so. The remaining 29 were from a series of 39 stories, numbered but unsigned, which appeared under the general title Plain Tales from the Hills on the dates below. So he had a profuse pen which went on pouring out stories. So that's interesting. Kipling was preeminently the one who knew. And if his knowingness is sometimes overdone, this is partly due to a youthful simulation of maturity and partly due to an exuberant sense of how much he really did know from experience and observation of the multifarious world of India. As he told his cousin Margaret Jones in February 1889, on the eve of his departure, he had tried to get to know folk from the barrack room and the brothel to the ballroom and the Viceroy's council, and he had in a little measure succeeded. Wow. So he was a man around town who had got to know the people, the place, and their behavior and why they did so. And Kipling's own philosophy of life was still in process of formation, though the diverse phenomena which he was now recording would contribute to it. The way he recorded it contributed to the way people view it today. But his delight in life's diversity was always crucial to his fiction, as suggested by his later volume, A Diversity of Creatures, Plain Tales from the Hills, are entertainments, superb entertainments based on his eager, inexhaustible interest in the human comedy. And perhaps the best introduction to them is his inscription in the copy he presented to Mrs. Hill in Allahabad in March 1888. So in the book which he gifted to her, he wrote, "Between the gum pot and the shears, the weapons of my grimy trade, in diverse moods and various years, these 40 foolish yarns were made, and some were writ to fill a page, and some, but these are not many, to soothe a finely moral rage, and all to earn an honest penny." So he says, I wrote it to earn a penny. And some I gathered from my friends, and some I looted from my foes, and some, all fish that heaven sends, are history of my private woes. And some are truth and some are lies, and some exactly half and half. I've heard some made a woman cry, and I know some that made a woman laugh. I do not view them with delight, and since I know that you may read them, I'd like to thoroughly rewrite, remold, rebuild, retouch, and reword them. Would they were worthier? That's too late. Cracked pictures stand no further stripping. Forgive the faults. To Mrs. Hill, signed Rudyard Kipling. He says, forgive the faults. And with that, he gave a virtual jewel of literature, which is a pleasure to hold and to read. Now we'll proceed into the book.